2025 is toast. Another year of your life, of my life, almost done. By the time this episode is released, most of you listening will already be on holiday, enjoying the festive season and a well-deserved break. And as always, this is the absolute best time to do some reflection on the year that has been. Work pressure might be slightly less. You have some free time and you have the opportunity to think about what has been, what has happened in your life in 2025. Was this a great year for you? Good? Average? Not so great? If it was anything less than great, it is important to do the necessary reflection to figure out where things went wrong and what you can potentially do to avoid more of the same in 2026. Intentionality with Paul Kempff, for people who lead with intention and live with impact. Maybe some aspects of your life in 2026 were great, others less so. That kind of sums up my personal view of this year that has been. Some spectacular, some good, and some not so great. Importantly for me this year has been one of increased awareness. Awareness of challenges in my life, both personal and professional. Awareness of my own shortcomings and limitations. Awareness of my impact on people close to me. Awareness of the difficulty of trying to live a more intentional life. Awareness of what I can do well and what I am not so good at. But most importantly, an increased awareness of things that I'm not aware of. This might not immediately make sense to you, but hopefully by the end of this episode, it will. Since some aspects of my life in 2025 were not quite spectacular, it means my own reflection must focus more on the specific parts of my life that was less than great, to figure out first what went wrong and then what I can do differently in 2026 to engineer a different outcome. Because come on, be honest, don't we all aspire to lives where all aspects of our lives are spectacular all of the time? Maybe that goal is a little bit lofty, a little bit far-fetched, but certainly we can all try and live a life where most aspects are spectacular most of the time. And this is where the topic of today's podcast comes in. There is something I've noticed this year, more than ever before, that I believe, if done intentionally, will undoubtedly help me, and hopefully, in me discussing it with you, also help you to figure out a little bit more of the secrets of this gorgeous mystery called life. Now, before we get to this topic, it is important to understand that it is simply one step in a larger process. A complicated process with many moving parts that I've spoken about in many different episodes in the last 2 years. The process of figuring out life and engineering a spectacular life includes many other things. Number 1, regular reflection. Number 2, identifying areas for improvement. Number 3, figuring out what you could do differently. Number 4, setting the goals, resolutions, mindset, habits, and behaviors that will help you make the changes needed to change your outcomes. And finally, number 5, intentional follow-through, doing the things that you said you were going to do. Now, let's narrow the focus for this episode to step number 2 in this process, identifying areas for improvement. This can be done with the help of a professional, a coach, psychologist, or mentor. Or it can be done with the help of a spouse, friend, or colleague. It can even simply be done on your own with the necessary focused reflection. But there is an inherent risk in doing this reflection on your own. It is something that might be preventing you from living and experiencing the spectacular life that you crave. And if year after year you keep on doing the hard work, keep on doing the reflection, keep on setting the goals, and yet not achieving the desired outcomes, not living the spectacular life you desire, maybe the answer can be found in something that you have not thought of looking at before. And that is the topic of this episode today: psychological blind spots. We talk a lot on the show about living life with more intention, about defining your purpose, making better choices, and aligning your actions, behaviors, and habits with your values. But what if there was an invisible force working against every one of us every single day? It is often the reason good people make bad decisions. Smart, successful people keep on repeating self-destructive behaviors. It is often the reason why relationships are strained and we struggle to learn lessons from our mistakes. It is because we do not know what we are doing wrong. The force that we are unaware of is a psychological blind spot. So what exactly is a psychological blind spot? I have found two definitions that I like. First, a lack of insight or awareness, often persistent, about a specific area of one's behavior or personality, typically because recognition of one's true feelings and motives would be painful. The second definition, an unconscious area in your thinking, perception, or behavior where we fail to see our own biases, flaws, strengths, or the impact of our actions, creating a gap between our self-perception and reality, often leading to misjudgment and conflict, though others see it clearly. I like the second definition better than the first one because of those last 5 words, though others see it clearly. And this is where the risk of self-reflection manifests. Why it might be time for you to turn to someone else, not necessarily a professional, to help you identify your blind spots. Because yes, by definition, it is something that you cannot see or identify yourself. But more importantly, in my experience, absolutely everyone has blind spots. I've not yet met the exception. This could be potentially good news because it explains a hell of a lot of people out there and why they behave the way they do. Have you ever found yourself wondering about a friend, family member, or colleague and why they continue to behave in self-destructive ways? Or why they do things in ways that you can clearly see is not serving them? In some cases, for some strange, deep-rooted reason, this behavior is intentional and the person is fully aware of what they are doing wrong. I do not want to talk about those cases today. Sometimes the behavior is unintentional. Maybe the person is genuinely acting from a place of unawareness. Maybe it is simply a blind spot they have that nobody has been brave enough to point out to them in the past. Okay, be honest. How many of you listening right now are thinking, I do not have any psychological blind spots? The bad news for today's episode is I believe you are wrong. Maybe the biggest blind spot you have is thinking that you do not have any blind spots. And this can only be because of one of 3 reasons. First, you have not yet done enough serious introspection in your life to realize what your blind spots are, or even that you have them. Second, you do not have enough people around you that love you and care about you and are brave enough to point out what your blind spots are. Are you genuinely open to this type of feedback and potential criticism, or is this actually your blind spot? And then third, your arrogance is getting in the way of your self-awareness and preventing you from accepting that you have blind spots, and arrogance is in fact your biggest blind spot. It only took me about 50 years to realize the exact extent or scope of my blind spots and the effect they were having on my life in general and on relationships and consequential happiness in particular. So let's explore blind spots in more detail and see if I can get you to accept that you have them, to start the process of identifying them, and then either working on improving these blind spots or at the very least being aware of them and how they are getting you to show up in life. Think of blind spots as the gap between the impact that you think you are having and the reality others experience. If intentionality is the map, your blind spot is the mountain you cannot see blocking the road. Until you acknowledge it, you are driving on autopilot, heading towards an inevitable, unintentional outcome. Today, I want us to try and move past the basic concept of, I didn't even know I was interrupting people, to systematically finding ways to eliminate the cognitive gaps that threaten your intentional life. The problem with the blind spot is simple. You are blind to it. By definition, you cannot introspect your way out of it. Blind spots usually stem from cognitive biases, defense mechanisms, emotional triggers, or cultural conditioning, making us resistant to feedback about them. Some key characteristics of blind spots are unawareness. You genuinely don't know these aspects of yourself exist, even if others point them out to you. They are hidden. For example, unrecognized weaknesses like interrupting or even unappreciated strengths like leadership. It's a cognitive bias. Systematic errors in thinking, like believing you're less biased than others, is a perfect example of a blind spot. Not recognizing the gap between impact and intent. Not seeing how your actions, your intent, negatively affect others, your impact. And then resistance to feedback. Becoming aggressive when someone tries to highlight your blind spot. Unfortunately, nobody is required to take a class on what emotions are and how they work before we start living. Which means we go through life with psychological blind spots we're not even aware of, and we usually have no way to compensate for them. These blind spots can lead to everything from mood difficulties like anxiety and depression to interpersonal conflict and unhealthy habits. In psychological terms, one of the most recognized types of blind spots is known as the bias blind spot. Research confirms this is one of the most pervasive cognitive errors we have. We are highly skilled at seeing the flaws and biases in others, but we fundamentally believe we are operating rationally and objectively. We trust our own internal narrative way too much. It is our inability to recognize the impact of our biases and limitations on our judgment, behavior, and decisions. Although we do not have problems to recognize them in others, which indicates that this is not a matter of ignorance, but rather of a motivated ignorance to protect the image that we have formed of ourselves. We all love to think, to assume or believe that our thoughts are reality, that our values are the highest, that our beliefs are the absolute truth, and our way of thinking the only way possible. We like to believe that our ideas are rational and those of others inconsistent. And it's these immovable certainties that are anchored in our psychological blind spots. And they do not add points in our favor. On the contrary, they subtract when judged by others. The problem with psychological blind spots is that we assume these biases are trustworthy, thinking that we are immune to them. So we deceive ourselves, labeling others as biased, while we believe that we are objective and impartial. This is an illusion. Everything that we deny about us weakens us because it prevents us from growing, making us assume a more immature and maladjusted position. A great example of blind spots to expand on can be found in how we handle conflict. When you are in a tense meeting trying to defend your position and start to feel yourself losing ground, your voice gets louder. You talk over a colleague and correct their point of view. They push back, so you try to convince everyone you're right. It feels almost like an out-of-body experience, and in many ways it is. In terms of neurochemistry, your brain has been hijacked. In situations of high stress, fear or distrust, the hormone and neurotransmitter cortisol floods the brain. Executive functions that help us with advanced thought processes like strategy, trust building, and compassion shut down. And the amygdala, our instinctive brain, takes over. The body makes a chemical choice about how best to protect itself. In this case, from the shame and loss of power associated with being wrong. And as a result, we are unable to regulate our emotions or handle the gaps between expectations and reality. So we default to one of four responses: fight, keep arguing the point; flight, revert to and hide behind group consensus; freeze, disengage from the argument by shutting up; or appease, make nice with your adversary by simply agreeing with them. These harmful responses prevent the honest and productive sharing of information and opinion. I find the fight response to be by far the most damaging to relationships, and is also unfortunately the most common one. That's partly due to another neurochemical process. When you argue and win, your brain floods with different hormones, adrenaline and dopamine, which makes you feel good, dominant, even invincible. It's a feeling that we want to replicate. So the next time we're in a tense situation, we fight again, and thus become addicted to being right. Many successful leaders suffer from this addiction. They are skilled at fighting for their point of view, and yet they are unaware of the dampening impact their behavior has on those around them. While one person gets high on his or her dominance, others are drummed into submission, experiencing the fight, flight, freeze, or appease response, which diminishes their collaborative impulses. Luckily, there's another hormone that can feel just as good as adrenaline: oxytocin. It's activated by human connection, and it opens up the networks in our executive brain, or prefrontal cortex, increasing our ability to trust and open ourselves to sharing. Your goal should be to spur the production of oxytocin in yourself and others, while avoiding those spikes of cortisol and adrenaline. How do we achieve this? 3 exercises to try today to cure your addiction to being right, and in the process also address potential blind spots are: number 1, set the rules of engagement. If you're heading into a meeting that could get testy, start by outlining the rules of engagement. Have everyone suggest ways to make it a productive, inclusive conversation, and write those ideas down. For example, you might agree to give people extra time to explain their ideas and to listen without judgment. These practices will counteract the tendency to fall into harmful conversational patterns. Number 2, listen with compassion. In one-on-one conversations, make a conscious effort to speak less and listen more. The more you learn about other people's perspectives, the more likely you are to feel compassion for them. And when you do that for others, they'll want to do it for you, creating a virtuous circle. And number 3, plan who speaks. In situations when you know that one person is likely to dominate the conversation, create opportunities for everyone to speak. Ask all parties to identify who in the room has important information, perspectives, or ideas to share. Then list them and the areas they should speak about on a flip chart and use that as your agenda, opening the floor to different speakers, asking open-ended questions, and taking notes. Connecting and bonding with others trumps conflict. I've found that even the best fighters, the proverbial smartest guys in the room, can break their addiction to being right by being hooked on this oxytocin-inducing behavior instead. Luckily, it's possible to become aware of your psychological and emotional blind spots and work to overcome them. So what are some of the ways we can do this? First, implement the stereo rule. This is a simple, powerful feedback mechanism. If you hear the exact same feedback or concern, whether it's about your connection style, strategic oversight, or your temper, from 2 or more unrelated people, you must stop immediately and assume the premise is 100% true. Do not rationalize it, do not defend it. The stereo rule short-circuits your ego's defense mechanism. Second, seek advice. I could have used a different word here that's not as popular: accountability. Just hearing that word strikes fear in the hearts of some. Why is that? We don't like people telling us what to do or asking us how we're doing when it comes to achieving our goals. My answer to that: rename it and call it advice. A good advisor can come in the form of a trusted friend or colleague. He or she can be a hired coach, consultant, or even a counselor. Recruiting a good advisor is one of the best ways to help you ferret out those emotional potholes that are knocking your life out of alignment. When they point out those troublesome areas, listen objectively. While they may hit a nerve with you, it will likely happen for a reason. Being open could change your life for the better. A more extreme version of this solution is to find an intentional truth teller. Delegate someone whose only job is to challenge your core assumptions and point out potential blind spots without fear of repercussion. This is your personal devil's advocate. This person must be intellectually diverse from you and have the courage to tell you the things that you don't want to hear. Creating this relationship is perhaps the hardest thing worth doing for anyone because it requires true humility. Third, stop assuming that others see what you see, feel what you feel, and think what you think. This is rarely the case. Your blind spots cause you to fail to recognize that emotions such as fear and distrust change how you and others interpret and talk about reality. You think you understand and remember what others say, when you really only remember what you think about what they say. Fourth, don't underestimate your propensity to have conversational blind spots. Start paying attention to and minimizing the time you own the conversational space. Share that space by asking open-ended discovery questions to which you don't know the answers, so you stay curious. Then listen non-judgmentally to the answers and ask for follow-up questions. 5. Increase awareness with validated assessments. The first aspect of emotional intelligence, and likely one of the most important, is self-awareness. We often can't see the areas that are hindering us because we can't be objective with ourselves. Besides getting feedback from close friends and family members, a great way to gain this knowledge is through the use of validated assessments. Using scientific tools like these enables one to recognize the truth for oneself. Since the person provides the answers that generate the results of the assessment, the end resulting information can be very eye-opening in its accurate representation of the person. Sixth, practice appreciation. Some people call it gratitude, others prefer thankfulness. Learning to be grateful will put you in a different emotional state. Without appreciation, we often find ourselves stuck in a negative emotional loop, and the blind spots are only magnified. The research is there. Gratitude gives us a shot of dopamine and a swig of serotonin. Dopamine makes us feel good and has been linked to intrinsic motivation in goal accomplishment, whether academic, personal, or professional. And serotonin enhances our mood, our willpower, and motivation. There is irrefutable evidence that gratitude shifts your thinking, changes your perspective, and enhances your life in general. Start your day with gratitude. Release those good brain chemicals as soon as possible upon waking up. The blind spots will be reduced and the negative patterns of thinking will be minimized. And seventh, continually adjust. All airplanes are off course 99% of the time. The purpose and the role of the pilot and the avionics is to continually bring the plane back on course so that it arrives on schedule at its destination. Change doesn't happen all at once, and there will be times you will sink back to your old patterns of behavior. Don't beat yourself up, but do adjust. Figure out what it will take to get back on course and then follow that path. Give attention to where you want to go, not to where you've been. When it comes to energy, you have the choice to focus on the positive or dwell on the negative. Focusing on the positive will uplift everything else in your life and all around you. Once you know where the emotional blind spots are, do everything you can to remove them or minimize them. Emotional blind spots are a part of life, but so is managing them. Once you identify them, appreciate where you've come from and adjust where you are going. Blind spots are where our unintentionality lives. They are the evidence that we are letting our biases and comfortable assumptions drive the bus. But awareness alone is not enough. You must couple awareness with intentional action. Today I challenge you, do not wait for a crisis to expose the invisible fault line in your strategy or your character. When you intentionally seek out what you cannot see, you move from surviving by chance to leading with clarity. That's it for this exploration of psychological blind spots. Thank you for spending the time with me and giving me some of your valuable attention. If you have not yet done so, please like and subscribe and engage with what we are doing on social media. Your support means the world to me and allows us to have a bigger impact on more people. And if there's someone you love and or care about that might be struggling with identifying their own blind spots and are therefore going through a hard time, please share this podcast or YouTube episode with them and show them you are ready to help them if they are willing to ask for help. All that is left for today is my tip of the week, and it is yet another book that I have started reading. I feel so privileged to have been able to read one spectacular book after another over the last few months, and this one is probably the pick of the bunch. So I highly recommend you go and read The Wealth Money Can't Buy by Robin Sharma this December holiday. It will be well worth your while. An easy read with short, powerful chapters and an overall message that I can endorse wholeheartedly. If you want a truly rich life, this book is a must-read. Until next time, stay intentional and have a wonderful week. You've been listening to Intentionality, where we grow together. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a rating. And if this helped you today, share it with someone else on the same journey. Until next time, keep showing up with intention.